Hi, I think I'm gonna be political for a second. So, as of late, a few things have been happening in my country specifically, and I understand that most of you will not have anything to do with this, and I understand that most of you, if there is anyone watching this, there's that, are not really gonna care. Or maybe if you do care, it's not gonna be so close to you. But since there's this wave of authoritarianism hanging around and going through the world, I think it's pertinent for me to talk about this specifically. This is gonna sound obvious probably to a lot of you, but I'm gonna say it anyway because I think it needs to be said. Pulling funding from universities that allow for events and protests against the government is, you know, a form of censorship. And I'm not saying this is specifically one way or the other of the political spectrum. I'm not gonna get into that. I'm just gonna talk specifically about freedom of speech and how that's affected by, you know, funding and other things. Because a lot of times when we think about censorship, I think we think specifically about the thing we see in movies and everything, which is, you know, you take a document and you edit it and cut parts out, or you don't allow a song to be released, any of those things. That's censorship. That is censorship. That is the idea that we have of censorship as a whole. But it's not the only way of censorship that is. Pretty much anything can be censorship if you really think about it, think of a way. But we're gonna talk funding and how that affects the whole thing. Because, as you might have guessed, my country's government has recently released a statement saying that they would pull funding, a lot of funding, about 30% if I'm not mistaken, from universities that allow for acts, political acts and events that as of late have been very against this current government. And that's what they said specifically. They said that these certain universities that are well known in the country would suffer a budget cut for causing and promoting turmoil. That's pretty okay translation of the word they used, for promoting turmoil. And I mean, it's pretty obvious, but that's a form of censorship. I don't really need to say why. I think it's basically saying that these universities, if they want to keep working, they need to C-U-L-L the free speech and expression of the political views of its students. I mean, of course, it's caused a lot of uproar, and then perhaps by the time I post this video, they will have said, no, I'm not gonna do this, because they have done that a lot. They released like very controversial statements, and then people were like, you won't, and they were like, okay, we won't. Yeah, that's what they did a lot of times. Actually, it's surprising. Yeah, I'm not gonna like get very into that because people get really angry when we talk about politics. It's my second video. I'm not gonna be... I don't want people to hate me yet. But I get really red too. Look how red I am. I look like a potato. Potatoes aren't red. I look like a tomato. It's very hot. As I was saying, I'm not going to focus specifically on my country because I think it's not productive. But I want to talk about how that's also happened, and is happening perhaps in a bit more drastic way than my country even. As I said, we're living a wave of authoritarianism in the world right now. It's happening in the Philippines. Pretty heavy stuff what's happening there. It's happening in Venezuela. It's happening in Honduras. Specifically in universities, I think it's happened a lot in Brazil. Back then, it's happened in Chile. The things that have been happening in censorship in general, I think it's interesting. Someone probably is studying and doing huge research and surveys and stuff like that about this exact thing. I really didn't. I'm just talking what I think with the knowledge that I have in hand, which isn't much, I must admit. So, I think I started talking about censorship in universities, but you know, now it's worldwide, it's the whole thing, overall censorship, because I'm a mess and I really can't focus. So we're gonna talk about a lot of things. I don't really need to say that I don't like censorship because it's obvious no one likes censorship. But I also think it's important to talk about the other way around, when people actually allow and they push forward utilizing poorly freedom of speech, or I guess for them it's a very smart move, or you know, these authoritarian governments, but utilizing that to post fake news. I don't really like using this specific term because it reminds everyone a lot of Trump. But there's also that, the whole thing of disseminating fake news and putting them as truths, because especially in the age of social media, the age of information, it's very hard to stop fake notions, fake everything from spreading. But yeah, it's very dangerous, and basically my whole point is we need to keep watch you know, that kind of thing. The censorship is a very delicate matter, which sounds redundant. Normally censorship is used to censor things that talk about delicate matters. It comes in a lot of forms, and bribes can be a form of censorship. If people bribe a certain media outlet not to talk about a certain subject, it's a form of censorship. And the other way around is also very dangerous. They bribing so they actually do talk about a certain thing. Politics in the world nowadays is a very delicate, very complicated matter because of this. I think the role that media plays is, honestly, I know a lot of people talk about this, but I think it's a bit underestimated, because the whole thing of why this is working the way it is right now, why so many extremist leaders have been elected, so many extremist leaders, so many authoritarian leaders, populists rose to power, the way they did it in this specific moment in time was through social media, was through, you know, the way that information is spread nowadays, because it's very, very, very easy to say pretty much anything, and as long as you're a good enough sophist, is that how you say it, sophist? I'm gonna look it up. As long as you're a good sophist, as long as you have the power to convince people, a lot of people are going to believe you, even if you don't show any scientific data. Because a lot of people are still, nowadays, very emotional, so not very rational. So even if you give them data, they're not going to believe it. That's basically it. We need to watch out for that kind of thing. We need to be paying a lot of attention. And of course it's awful, of course it's hurting freedom of speech, it's unconstitutional in a lot of the countries that I've even mentioned. The Philippines, Venezuela, both of them actually do have things in their constitution saying, oh, the freedom of speech is protected at all costs. But it's not exactly what happens, right? And you will say it is, but it's never really what happens. This video wasn't specifically about freedom of speech. The paradox of freedom of speech is a very real thing. It's something we need to watch out for too. But I mean, I think it was enough politics for today. I'm gonna try to salvage anything from this video because it's probably gonna be hard. And yeah, I wanted to get a bit political right now. So yeah, once again, hope you liked it. If you didn't, then well, I'm sorry. And see ya.